morning, viewer. Welcome to our first activity. Here is a breaking news, yes, from Canberra, Australia. More than a year after the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia dropped the tightly held news they were combining submarine forces. The trio released more details Monday of their ambitious plan to counter China's rapid military expansions. Under the multi-decade AUKUS drill, the partners will build a combined fleet of elite nuclear-powered submarines using technology, labor, and funding from all three countries, creating a more formidable force in the Indo-Pacific than any of them could achieve alone. But the long timeline and huge financial costs running into the hundreds of billions for Australia alone pose questions about how far the partners' plans could stray from their optimal pathways in the decades to come as governments and potentially priorities change. In a joint statement Monday, US President Joe Biden, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and UK counterpart Rishi Sunak said the historic deal will build on past efforts by all three countries to sustain peace, stability, and prosperity around the world. The plan begins this year with training rotations for Australian personnel on US and UK subs and bases in the expectation that in roughly 20 years they all commander Australia's first ever nuclear powered fleet. But there is a long way to go between now and then, as outlined in a series of phases announced by the leaders as they stood side by side in San Diego Harbor. From 2023 along the trading Australians, US nuclear-powered subs will increase port visits to Australia, joined 3 years later by more visits from British-owned nuclear-powered subs. Come 2027, the US and UK subs will start rotation at HMAS Trailing, an Australian military port near Perth, Western Australia that's set to receive a multi-billion-dollar upgrade. Then from the early 2030s, pending Congress approval, Australia will buy 3 Virginia-class submarines from the US with an option to buy 2 more. Within the same decade, the UK plans to build its first AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine, combine its Astute-class submarine with US combat systems and weapons. Soon after, in the early 2040s, Australia will deliver the first of its homemade AUKUS subs to its Royal Navy. As a series of bullet points on the page, the plan seems straightforward. But the complexities involved are staggering and require an unprecedented level of investment and information sharing between the three partners, whose leaders' political careers are said to be far shorter than those of the man they are working to counter China's Xi Jinping. Last week, China's political elite endorsed Xi's unprecedented third term, solidifying his control and making him the longest serving head of state of Communist China since its founding in 1949. The most assertive Chinese leader in a generation, Xi has expanded his country's military forces and sought to extend Beijing's influence far across the Indo-Pacific, rattling Western power. Richard Darnley from the University of New South Wales said Australia was under pressure to respond after years of inaction, and the proposal is an impressive scramble for a workable plan. It is a last roll of the dice, and they have managed to just about thread the eye of a needle, coming up with something that looks pulsable. A rush of diplomacy took place before Monday's announcement, partly to avoid the shock impact of the initial announcement in 2021 when French President Emmanuel Macron accused former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison of lying to him when he pulled out of a $90 billion Australian deal to buy French subs. The deal would have delivered new submarines on a faster timeline, but they would have been conventional diesel-powered vessels instead of state-of-the-art nuclear ones. Australia learned from the diplomatic row, and its senior leaders, including Albanese, made around 60 calls to allies and regional neighbours to inform them of the plan before it was announced, according to Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles. China was not one of them. Biden told reporters Monday that he plans to speak with Xi soon but declined to say when that would be, adding that he was not concerned Xi would see the AUKUS announcement as aggression. That contrasts with the sentiment emerging from Beijing, including its accusation that trio is fomenting an arms races in Asia. At a daily briefing Monday, China's Foreign Minister spokesperson Wang Wenbin said the AUKUS partners had completely ignored the concern of the international community and gone further down a wrong and dangerous road. He said the deal would stimulate an arms race, undermine the international nuclear non-proliferation systems and damage regional peace and stability. Peter Dean, Director of Foreign Policy and Defense at the United States Studies Center at the University of Sydney, said the Chinese claims are overblown. If there is an arms race in the Indo-Pacific, there is only one country that is racing, and that is China, he told to the reporter. Smaller countries around the region are watching the AUKUS plan with concern that a greater presence in their waters could lead to unintended conflict, said Christian Atinadi Supriyanto from the Strategic Defense Studies Center at the Australian National University. With more rotational presence of US and UK subs in Australia, there is a greater necessity for China to surveil these units and thereby increase the likelihood of accidents or incidents at sea, he said. Biden stressed Monday that he wanted the world to understand that the agreement was talking about nuclear power, not nuclear weapons. According to a White House fact sheet, the US and UK will give Australian nuclear material in sealed welded power units that will not require refueling. Australia has committed to disposing of nuclear waste in Australia or defense-owned land, but that won't happen until at least the late 2050s, when the Virginia-class vessels are returned. Australia says it does not have the capability to enrich it to weapons grade, won't acquire it, and wants to abide by International Atomic Energy Agency's principles of non-proliferation. The AUKUS plan is an admission by Australia that without submarines that can spend long periods of time at great depths, the country is hopefully unprepared to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. It is hugely complex and hugely risky, said Darnley from the University of New South Wales. But when the original announcement and decision was made in 2021, there were very few good options left for Australia. So I think they have come out as well as they could have done, he added. Challenges are posed by a project of this scale, which includes many moving parts with potential knock-off effects to the timeline and cost. The deal involves upgrades to ports and fleets, including expanding the operational life of Australia's Collins-class submarines to the 2040s to aid in the transition to nuclear. You are having to take submarines out of for quite a significant chunk of time to repeat them, and if there are delays or issues that could cascade, you could see issues where Australia actually does not have enough submarines to maintain its current forces of mariners, let alone augment, said Darnley said. As all the countries race to expand their fleets, training enough staff could become a serious challenge, Darnley said. The security element of the roles means the pool of skilled workers as inevitable shadow efforts are being made in all countries to entice trainees to a life below the surface of the sea for months at a time, potentially not an easy sell in a competitive jobs market. Then the report, Posak TV.